Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for sticking around with us. We are now going to move into our second debate for the day, and this debate is between the Bregado Flax Educational Center and the Elmore Stoutt High School. The debate moot is the economic and social consequences of lockdown, stay-at-home orders, could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. I am excited to hear if this is so or if it is not. The proposition will be the Bregado Flax Educational Center, the opposition, the Elmore Stoutt High School. The students, when I call your name, please stand and be recognized. Bregado Flax Educational Center, our first speaker, Ms. Rochelle Dick. Second speaker, Shania Martin. Third speaker, or the rebuttal, we have Trevian John. For the Elmore Stoutt High School, first speaker, Ms. Nicole Melville. Second speaker is Ms. Deonce Lowenfield. And our rebuttal, Ms. Halla Selwood. Again, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, we want to thank all our officials for so ably assisting us year after year, and we cannot say thank you enough. You'll hear about our officials a little later as they're being introduced, but I want to spend time acknowledging our sponsors for this year's debate: the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, and Agriculture, Delta Petroleum, Aliman, Codero, Galindo, and Lee Trust, BVI, and BDO, British Virgin Islands. We are thankful to our sponsors, and all students will be rewarded for their effort during these debates. I now turn you over to our moderator who was introduced earlier, and he is no other than Edgewenka Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, viewing audience, I turn you over to our moderator who will continue the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Selwood. And of course, again, welcome to the second semifinal debate today on the MOOT. The economic and social consequences of lockdown, stay-at-home orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. We're certainly looking forward to this debate. For the proposition, we have Bregado Flax Educational Center, and for the opposition, we have Elmore Stoutt High School. Of course, our able auditors, Ms. Lauren Welch and Ms. Glenda Stevens, are still here with us, and our ever-present Renee Phipps, our timekeeper. Give them a round of applause. Our chief adjudicator, Ms. Nelsia St. John, with 10 years of experience in law as a barrister of the Eastern Caribbean Court, Supreme Court, British Virgin Islands. Nelsia St. John specializes in corporate and commercial law. She is also a member of the Lincoln's Inn and Bar of the United Kingdom and Wales since 2005. She's a native of the Commonwealth of Dominica who has been resident in the British Virgin Islands for over 20 years. Giving back to the community and supporting the youth are vital parts of her belief, and she has done so through her membership of over 10 years in the Rotary Club of Rowtown. She is a member of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners and the Big Brother, Big Sister Mentorship Program, both in the BVI and the United States. In her personal life, she enjoys traveling, shopping, and spending quality time with her friends and family. Give a warm welcome for our Chief Adjudicator, Ms. Nelsia St. John. Mr. Romain Duncan is currently an associate in the Harney's litigation team. In 2016, he was named class valedictorian of the University of the West Indies. He was the 2018 class president at the Norman Manley Law School. He is the 2017 Rollins College Grade Debate Champion and the 2015 10th Best Speaker at the Pan American Debating Championships. Please give a warm welcome for second adjudicator, Mr. Romaine Duncan. And Mr. Orwell Phillip is a senior lecturer at the H. Laverty Stoutt Community College. He provides instruction in biology, chemistry, environmental science, and disaster management. Prior to that, he worked as the Marine Biologist, Conservation and Fisheries Department, where he was responsible for organizing and monitoring of coastal ecosystems, coral reefs, mangroves, beaches, seagrass beds, as well as sea turtle and seabird nesting activities. Mr. Phillip holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Marine Biology, a Master of Science degree in Applied Marine Sciences. In addition, he is an avid reader and remains updated on national, regional, and global affairs. Give a warm welcome for my good brother, Orwell Phillip. To restate our judging criteria: soundness of points 35, logical development 20, ability, audibility and clarity 15, posture and personality 15 points, command of the language 15 points, group coordination 10 points, for a total of 110 points. The rebuttal judging criteria: recall of points 10, recall and general analysis of debate 14 points, ability to refute 20 points, spontaneity 6 points, for a total of 50 points. And for the best overall speaker, the best speaker and best overall speaker, audibility and clarity 15 points, articulation 15 points, voice modulation 10 points, command of material 10 points, persuasiveness 15 points, fluency 15 points, eye contact 5 points, body language 15 points, for a total of 100 points. All speakers will be considered when judging for best speaker. All speakers. Our procedures are: the first speakers for our proposition and opposition have 8 minutes to present their case. The second speakers have 5 minutes, and the rebuttal speakers have 4 minutes each. The timekeeper gives this signal, school bell, after at the 1 minute mark of the end of the allotted time. Let me say that again. The timekeeper gives a signal of the school bell 1 minute before the expiration of the speaker's allotted time. And then at the end of the allotted time, he'll give that sound again. Following the rebuttals, we'll have a 15-minute discussion while the adjudicators deliberate, 15 minutes or less. Auditors will collect the score sheets from the adjudicators, calculate the final scores, determine the best speaker and the winning team, and return those results to the adjudicator. Upon the return, the chief adjudicator will give a 5-minute constructive critique of the best speakers and of the teams, the winning team, and announce the winning team. The audience will have a discussion while the adjudicators are adjudicating, and I'm hoping that we'll get some more participation during this debate, because, you know, it's not easy for the moderator to be talking all the time. Okay, so y'all help me out, please. Thank you. Yes, indeed. So now for the debate. So let's give a big, warm welcome for the proposition's first speaker, Ms. Rochelle Dick.
We have to recognize that after this virus, there will be economic impact of the lockdown, and this economic projection is daunting. James Quincy, CEO of Coca-Cola. Mr. Moderator, my honorable judges, my worthy opponents and attentive audience, good afternoon. We, the proposition, unequivocally support the MOOT, which states, economic and social consequences of lockdown stay-at-home orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. Permit me to define the key terms in the MOOT. The Cambridge Dictionary defines consequences as the result of a particular action. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines lockdown as a temporary condition imposed by governmental authorities in which people are required to stay in their homes. Healthline defines stay-at-home order as a restriction of persons leaving their homes for non-essential activities. The Collins Online Dictionary defines harm as the damage to something which is caused by a particular course of action. We, the members of the proposition, understand the MOOT to mean that the results of governmental measures requiring persons to limit their movement or stay at home will cause more damage than the COVID-19 virus. As the first speaker of the proposition, I will examine the devastating economic consequences of these lockdown stay-at-home orders. My second speaker will outline the social consequences of these orders. Lastly, the third speaker will conduct the rebuttal. I will examine the following points. 1. Lockdown stay-at-home orders increases the burden of government expenditure. 2. These orders result in massive unemployment. 1. Lockdown stay-at-home orders increases the burden of government expenditure. Mr. Moderator, we are experiencing the economic consequences of previous lockdown stay-at-home orders, so hiding out in our homes is no longer a viable option for government. COVID-19 is not going anywhere. To even consider these restrictions again will be disastrous. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, lockdown stay-at-home orders have resulted in many countries facing recession and the global economy shrinking by 4.4% in 2020. In the BVI, the HEAT report projects an alarming decline of GDP between 13 to 17%. This decline is described as the worst since the 1930s. The fragile economies are further burdened with the distribution of stimulus packages, which include unemployment benefits and business grants amounting to astronomical figures. In 2020, the UK spent $262 million, the US $2.35 trillion, and the BVI government reported that $62.9 million was allocated for stimulus packages. What is even more frightening is that the government of the BVI has borrowed $40 million from the Social Security Board, money from your pension. Members of the opposition, aggressive spending due to lockdown stay-at-home orders will leave many countries, including the BVI, unprepared for any other disaster. According to the Wall Street Journal, there is an alarming trend of shrinking budgets to important sectors. Since the financial sector drives all other sectors, this will prove disastrous. Esteemed judges, a crippled BVI economy means that Social Security, like our struggling NHI, will be cash-strapped. No unemployment aid, no money for pension, no government aid for further hurricanes, and inadequate health care. 2. Lockdown stay-at-home orders result in massive unemployment. Lockdown stay-at-home orders directly impact the workforce. According to the IMF, 400 million jobs have been lost worldwide. Bloomberg reported that stay-at-home orders accounted for 52% of unemployment in the USA and 55% in the UK. The HEAT report showed that the BVI experienced a 12 to 17% unemployment rate in 2020. Additionally, the IMF reported that business closures in North America accounted for a much larger share of decline in employment than of the fall of COVID-19 contact rates, 48% versus 22%. This means that closure of businesses did not reduce the COVID-19 contact rate, but increased unemployment. Furthermore, wage freezes and cuts during these restrictions affected incomes, leading to less spending power. The United Nations revealed that 78% of households who experience unemployment or pay cuts could not afford to pay rent or purchase food during lockdowns. Esteemed judges, When breadwinners become unemployed, the family loses their financial security. Many are unable to pay rent, pay tuition, or pay for insurance. According to a United Nations report, 30 million more people will face poverty by the end of 2021. Mr. Moderator, lockdown and stay-at-home orders may keep you safe from the virus, but deprive you of necessities needed for survival. What is revealing is that the direct costs of COVID-19 associated with illness and mortality are lower than the indirect losses caused by government measures such as lockdown. A Stanford University study revealed that COVID-19 mortality rate is a mere 0.25%. A low mortality rate does not save any country from the current economic crisis. Take the BVI, who has one COVID-19 death, but huge economic losses for the government and its citizens. This revelation caused scientists and economists to sign the anti-lockdown Great Barrington Declaration. They argued that lockdowns will cause 50 times more harm than benefit, proving that the economic crisis that will plunge millions into poverty will far outweigh this virus. In conclusion, the financial devastation faced by many nations is collateral damage of lockdown and stay-at-home orders. No nation, no matter how wealthy, can afford the financial consequences of these measures. The BVI has lifted lockdown restrictions and have been successfully able to move forward with new protocols. Why then are we still grappling with this issue? Thank you.
Time, 7 minutes, 14 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. We now welcome the opposition's first speaker, Ms. Nicole Melville.
A parable paraphrased. A plague of death has descended upon this land. It has taken the lives of thousands. The people die painful and lonely, abandoned by fearful relatives. The bodies are dumped in the pit each night. Lime is thrown on top, then dirt. The towns and villages are laid waste. Rollin Grams. Mr. Moderator, esteemed judges, attentive audience, worthy opponents, fellow teammates, good afternoon. My team and I will present factual, well-researched statistics and unbiased evidence. We will offer expert opinion from respected sources, both foreign and domestic, to show why we stand steadfastly in opposition to the claim that the economic and social consequences of lockdown orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. As first speaker, I will lay the foundation of our argument, define relevant terms to avoid confusion, and begin our case. I will present findings from respected organizations that confirm the necessity of lockdowns to protect the public. I will also challenge the misconceptions that diminish our view of the severity of this deadly virus. Our second speaker will continue building our case and present the local point of view on this issue. She will compare our successful policies with those of other countries in the region. Finally, our rebuttal speaker will summarize our argument, offer her opinions, and highlight instances where we disagree with our worthy opponents. Collectively, we will show that while lockdowns can have serious effects, both economically and socially, they pale in comparison to that most horrible of consequences, death itself. Please allow me now, Mr. Moderator, to define the relevant terms associated with this debate. According to the Merriam-Webster English Dictionary, economic is defined as the process by which goods and services are produced, sold, and bought in a country. Social refers to human society, the interaction of the individual and the group, or the welfare of human beings as members of society. Consequences are those produced by a cause or following from a set of conditions. Lockdown orders are a temporary condition imposed by governments, as during the outbreak of an epidemic disease in which people are required to stay in their homes and refrain from or limit activities outside the home. Harm is simply physical or mental damage, and of course, the COVID-19 virus is a respiratory illness that is caused by coronavirus SARS-2. It's important to note, Mr. Moderator, that SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. Our worthy opponents harp on the economic and social effects of temporary lockdowns, and there are a few. We don't dispute that. We recognize that the issue is complex, but to suggest that those consequences could cause more harm than a deadly virus is irresponsible and wrong. The World Health Organization, WHO, has published studies illustrating the impact of lockdowns on economies, but at the same time, the WHO recognizes the absolute necessity of lockdowns to protect public health. In an article on their website posted on December 31st, 2020, the WHO states, large-scale physical distancing measures, often referred to as lockdowns, can slow COVID-19 transmission by limiting contact between people. The article goes on to state that the WHO recognizes the necessity of nations issuing stay-at-home orders. Mr. Moderator, the world's preeminent authority on public health advocates the use of lockdowns to protect citizens regardless of the social and economic costs of such measures. In fact, there is abundant evidence that shows that lockdowns can actually be good for economies. Let me repeat that. For emphasis, lockdowns can be good for the economy. An October 2020 report from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, found that while lockdowns impose short-term costs that may lead to a faster economic recovery by bringing infections under control, lockdowns may thus pave the way to a faster economic recovery as people feel more comfortable about resuming normal activities. This recovery is happening now in the BVI because of lockdowns. More concerning is the tendency we have to minimize the severity of this virus. Seemingly low mortality rates do not tell the whole story. According to leading public health expert Dr. Elizabeth Stoutt of Johns Hopkins University, the exact mortality rate of COVID-19 is still not known. A hypothetical rate of 1% would still result in a massive number of deaths if left to spread unchecked, and that there was a ripple effect of consequences for a lot of people, not just the deceased individual. Mr. Moderator, while it appears that most people recover from the disease, Dr. Stoutt goes on to note that there are also non-lethal complications to COVID-19 that are important, so it is challenging to relax control measures when the spread is high. The lockdown measures put in place were not done lightly. The economic and social consequences were difficult, but consider the alternative. Close your eyes for a minute and imagine the emergency room at the hospital. Look at the hundreds of people clamoring outside for news about their loved ones. Imagine them pushing forward to get a glimpse of a grandmother as she takes her last breath. Look at all those people laying in the corridors, coughing, gasping for air as they wait for their turn under ventilators, as they wait for salvation. Thank you.
Time, 7 minutes, 30 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome for our proposition's second speaker, Ms. Shania Martin.
We in the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of control for this virus. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. Dr. David Nabarro, World Health Organization 2020. Esteemed moderator, respected judges, members of the opposition, we, the members of the proposition, will continue to persuade you that the economic and social consequences of lockdown orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. I will expound on 3 key aspects of the social impact. 1, domestic abuse. 2, mental health. 3, food insecurity. 1, domestic abuse. First, lockdown periods cause a spike in domestic violence. Medical News Today reported that France recorded a 30% increase in reported domestic violence cases. The UK's largest domestic abuse charity, Refuge, reported a whopping 700% increase to calls to its helpline. Esteemed judges, lockdown policies have made women and children more vulnerable to domestic violence, as they are trapped in a home with abusive partners. In the BVI, our Premier was forced to make an impassioned appeal to abusers to desist during our period of lockdown. The fear of a pandemic, coupled with the fear of an abusive partner, put these persons at risk for challenges that far outweigh the pandemic itself. 2, mental health. Lockdown policies that confine persons to their homes put them at risk for new mental health issues and exacerbated existing ones. Public mental health concerns will continue to significantly increase if we continue with these restrictions. According to Hamadani et al. 2020, stay-at-home orders increase depression and anxiety in women. KFF Health Tracking Poll reported that in the United States, 4 in 10 adults reported anxiety and depression during the pandemic, up from 1 in 10 adults in 2019. Mr. Moderator, lockdown policies not only increase mental health challenges, they significantly limit access to the care that is needed, since persons are unable to leave their homes to seek treatment. Governments cannot ignore that these dangerous mental health consequences may lead to hundreds more losing their lives. 3, food insecurity. Lockdowns increase food insecurity among the vulnerable. In a study to assess food insecurity during lockdowns, Das et al. 2020 found that 90% of urban and rural households were suffering from some level of food insecurity. Disruption to supply chains in combination with lockdowns limits access to essential supplies for millions. Those living in remote areas were among the worst affected. The situation was particularly acute in Haiti, where 1.6 million face severe food shortages. Do not assume, my esteemed opponents, that this difficulty is limited to poor countries. In the United States, the COVID impact survey found that 40% of households were food insecure during stay-at-home orders. In the BVI, the HEAT report highlighted that under lockdown, 63% of the poor and vulnerable were unable to provide sufficient nutrition for their families. This will negatively affect their nutrition, putting them at risk for diseases, including the same COVID-19 that the lockdown was supposed to protect them from. Mr. Moderator,
the severe social consequences of lockdown and stay-at-home orders will remain long after we receive our vaccines and will outweigh any small benefit that these restrictions provide. Dr. David Staples noted that lockdowns will cause 10 times more harm to humans than the COVID-19 itself. The evidence we presented also supports this statement. I thank you.
Time, 4 minutes, 30 seconds.
We now welcome the opposition's second speaker, Ms. Deonce Lowenfield.
Good afternoon, everyone. I recognize the established protocol. It is my job to continue our argument and enlighten you on why we so stridently oppose this claim. Mr. Moderator, I will look at this issue from our perspective in the Virgin Islands and compare our success in handling the pandemic to the efforts of other countries in the Caribbean. No matter your view on this debate, I think that is beyond dispute that the measures implemented have helped us to avoid serious outbreaks of the pandemic. Unlike the US, UK, and Caribbean countries like Barbados, where the virus has run rampant and has ruined economies, we have maintained a steady course, navigating this storm in such a manner that will make our seafaring ancestors proud. In the Virgin Islands, we have handled this pandemic in an effective way. Our government, working with the United Nations and acting upon advice from international experts, decided early on that a lockdown was necessary to control the spread of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. Further, much was done to mitigate against the economic and social challenges faced by many, especially those who work in the service industry. Unemployment benefits, stimulus funds, and even food was distributed throughout this crisis to help people cope. Look at it this way, Mr. Moderator. The lockdown actually made it possible for us to focus on economic and social issues that the virus brought by allowing us to increase spending on relieving those concerns. If we had not locked down, we would have to spend those resources importing ventilators and coffins. How useful would open restaurants and bars be then? Think about it. Our medical facilities were protected against outbreaks by judicious lockdowns that spared us the horrors experienced in places that remained open. According to BVI.gov, our success caught the eye of UN Assistant Secretary General Luis Felipe Lopez Calva, who commended our Premier, the Honorable Andrew Foy, for, and I quote, his government's early and decisive action that contained the spread of the virus and has helped to cushion its negative effects on businesses. None of this is possible without lockdowns. Let's be real. Conversely, Mr. Moderator, countries that did not lock down to keep their industries and borders open suffered serious consequences, not only medically because of the rapid spread of the virus, but economically as well. In their haste to make some short-term profits, their impulsive decisions only succeeded in causing long-term damage to the health of their people and to their standing as tourism destinations. According to Garda.com, in an article published on December 31st, 2020, officials in Barbados were forced to modify entry and movement restrictions in order to stem the spread of COVID-19, which threatened to overwhelm their medical infrastructure. In fact, the situation got so out of hand that Prime Minister Mia Mottley was forced to implement a 2-week lockdown from February 3rd, 2021, amid a sharp increase in infections and deaths caused by the virus. What a disaster! Mr. Moderator, esteemed judges, ladies and gentlemen, worthy opponents, we live in difficult times. We must have a clear vision of the way forward, the vision to make the right decisions even if they are not popular, the vision to base our strategies and our policies on sound scientific advice, the vision to consider our material and emotional needs without compromising that most precious of blessings, our health. Because where there is no vision, the people perish, literally. Thank you.
Time, 4 minutes, 38 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. Let us now observe 5 minutes of complete silence in order for the teams to prepare the rebuttals. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome for Ms. Hala Selwood, the opposition, to present the rebuttal.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I acknowledge the previously established protocol. There are a range of symptoms caused by COVID-19. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness. The most severe symptoms range from difficulty of breathing or shortness of breath, chest pain or pressure, loss of speech and or movement, and even death. Though my opponents may bring up the seemingly low mortality rates of COVID-19, the lasting effects of the virus, such as damage to the heart and or lungs, is nothing to minimize. My opponents would have you believe that lockdown orders are more damaging than this deadly virus. And I am here to say that that is grossly incorrect. The WHO, one of the world's leading authorities on COVID-19, admits that though lockdowns can be difficult, they are very necessary. As I listened to the opposition's first speaker, they pointed out that lockdowns can cause massive unemployment and major hits to the economy. But I must ask, aren't temporary job losses better than permanent job losses? People who remain healthy will always have a chance to find a job. It is hard to find a job when you're sick, even harder to find a job when you're dead. The economy can bounce back when people are healthy. Some businesses have closed temporarily, and that is very unfortunate. But the vast majority here in the Virgin Islands were able to remain open because lockdowns have kept us safe. If you need an example, in places like Australia, where they had stringent lockdown orders, when the lockdown was over, they were able to basically go back to life without COVID-19. When I was listening to the opposition's second speaker, they mentioned that people did not have access to food during these lockdowns. But here in the BVI, the government gave out food, churches gave out food, shelters gave out food. There were many venues for people to receive such things. I must ask, what did the proposition even argue? That keeping people safe during a deadly pandemic is more harmful than allowing the virus to spread freely? The proposition has tried to minimize the deadly effects of this virus and tried to discourage the single best remedy we have against its spread, lockdowns. This argument is grossly irresponsible and puts lives at risk. We know that there are many problems that come from lockdowns, but our opponents forgot to mention all of the positives. Families making TikTok videos together, learning how to bake. I know for a fact that I learned how to bake during the lockdown. And all of the new businesses started as a result of the lockdown that will most assuredly positively affect the economy. We, the opposition, have unequivocally proven our point, and I will once again state, the economic and social consequences of the lockdown, stay-at-home orders, cannot, do not, and could never cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. Thank you.
Time, 3 minutes, 44 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. I'll give a warm welcome for the proposition's rebuttal speaker, Ms. Trevian John.
Mr. Moderator, honorable judges, members of the audience, and supporters online, we listened to the opposition, but they failed to convince us that the economic and social consequences of lockdown would not cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. We, the members of the proposition, continue to vehemently support the MOOT, which states that the economic and social consequences of lockdowns and stay-at-home orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. Firstly, we understand that at the beginning of this pandemic, the lockdown had some minor benefits because there was so much misinformation about the virus. Now we are equipped with new information. We know that the BVI has implemented protocols. And now, with the introduction of the vaccine and the already implemented social distancing protocols, lockdown and stay-at-home orders have been rendered obsolete. If we continue to hide in our homes every time there's an outbreak, we will never be able to function with this virus. It is most certainly not going anywhere. The opposition also mentioned that the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders did allow families to bond together. Members of the opposition, I don't know about you. As much as I love my family, 3 weeks into lockdowns and stay-at-home orders, I had enough of family bonding. As my second speaker mentioned, abuse increases during these restrictions. There are often conflicts with one another. This repeated action will lead to child abuse. The opposition also noted that lockdowns and stay-at-home orders protect the medical facilities. Esteemed judges, no country's healthcare sector is ever really prepared for a global pandemic. During these lockdowns, while hospitals may reduce COVID-19 related treatment, it also denied others with serious health conditions treatment. Cancer patients and people with pre-existing conditions were all denied access to these facilities during these orders. We can't continue to live in fear, as our former Minister of Education, Mr. Myron Walwyn, said. Now, we have all these new measures in place, including the fact that the CDC said that masks are 95% effective, and there will always be some new virus. We can't continue to live in fear. In conclusion, we have seen the economic and social devastation of the lockdown and stay-at-home orders. To suggest that this type of restriction could cause less harm is to deny the evidence that is right in front of you. We need to move forward so that economies can recover and persons can resume some sort of normalcy. To revert to lockdown and stay-at-home orders will be the doom for us all. We will not only be unable to live with the virus, we will be unable to live. We, the proposition, rest our case.
Time, 3 minutes, 43 seconds.
Yes, indeed. I think the debates are getting better and better all the time. Well, it's time for adjudicators to retire, 15 minutes or less, to determine the best speakers and the winning debate team. In the meantime, we get an opportunity as an audience to have a discussion on the MOOT, the economic and social consequences of a lockdown, stay-at-home orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. Who agrees with that statement? Who agrees with the statement that the lockdown caused more harm than the virus? Nobody agrees. Okay. So the lockdowns were a good thing.
Yes, they were. To a great extent. But on the other hand, they also cause...
Speak right into the mic, sister, so we can hear
Yeah,
you.
they also cause some difficulties. How I'm going to look at it is that what happened and what was happening before in our societies anyhow, where there were disparities and inequities in our societies, whether in the larger countries or in our small countries in the Caribbean. So how I would look at it is this. The lockdowns exposed or show that there were deserts. Deserts used in another term, in another way from how we usually use it as the physical environment. And I'm using it out of the National Geographic way of using the word desert, where you would have food deserts, book deserts, technology deserts. So you would have a deficit of these needs or wants within a particular country. And then there is that attempt to right certain societal wrongs. So educationally, you would have book deserts because I follow International Literacy Association, and I've been following up on some webinars and seminars and some other organizations that put up information on educational issues. So educationally, there would be things like libraries and other needs for society that would not be available to certain segments of the population. Food, as in food insecurity. Yes, so then again, a need to right a societal wrong where segments of the population living below the poverty line, not being able to have daily or weekly sustenance, would have to be assisted to get that sustenance. And then technology deserts. We realized that across the Caribbean, our technology providers could not reach all of the persons who needed to have the technology, even to access the food. Even locally, there were persons who might not have been able to go online to give their location to say, okay, this is where come and distribute to me because I'm in need. So, again, also, because I've been trained as a darkness to light, Stores of Children facilitator through the BVI Red Cross and other international agencies, this issue of child abuse and neglect is an important one for us to look at again in our BVI society and across the region, because even if the numbers didn't increase, it's still a topic or of conversation is that we hear the newspaper and online headlines and we read the articles, but then I don't think sometimes at our highest level, our forum, the House of Assembly, don't speak sometimes as much as they could to this particular issue. We just hear that this has happened, we shouldn't speak to it, it is sensitive, don't discuss it, let us just go through the court process, which we should, and then come to have that justice rendered. Another thing I want to raise is that criminal activity. I was wondering if it's not the COVID that is causing harm to the population, then there could have been more statistics as to the criminal activity. For example, the gun violence, the burglaries, the assaults, and other things that were happening in our territory. I'm not sure if during lockdowns or during, between the time frames between the lockdowns. So I'm looking at these as social effects. And where the technology and the food would be the economic effects. So how I look at it as that umbrella issue of inequities in societies, where groups of individuals and are not served well, so that when it comes to situations like an epidemic or pandemic, then there's that greater disparity between groups.
Okay, so you still have more? So you're saying the lockdown did more harm than the virus?
In our case, in our BVI case.
And
there was the mention of the mental health, the anxiety and depression. Yes, I also came across articles on that, particularly UK and other places.
Do you think the lockdown caused any deaths?
The one that occurred, I don't know that it happened during our lockdown.
I mean, the one death we had as a result of someone contracting the disease.
Yes, before.
But I'm talking about the restrictions, the lockdown, the stay-at-home orders.
No.
Did anyone? Has it been claimed that anyone died from those that action?
No, not from that action. From other actions outside of the lockdown.
Right. So,
which I spoke of here as criminal activities and.
Okay. So would you say then that the lockdown did not cause as much harm as the virus? Because the virus was killing people, but the lockdown wasn't killing anybody.
In our BI case, no.
Okay, but and let me make sure I'm clear. When you use the word desert, you're using it and you're using the context of absence of
or lack of.
Yeah, or the lack of. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the lockdowns brought out the disparities in the community.
Yes.
Okay. So
the disparities might not be so great for us as a small territory, but as I indicated, that there are organizations such as the International Literacy Association that will speak to the issue of libraries, museums, and other educational needs for certain segments of the population that would affect.
Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing though that that the lockdown was able to point out how many poor people we have?
Yes.
And how many and how the social services,
yes.
how inadequate the social services were, and how effective our non-profit organizations were in helping the needy. I mean, you could sort of like look at that from a perspective that
overall
it was good.
They were very, very effective from how I see how they work together and manage the situation.
So you still think that the lockdowns were more harm than good? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what side you're on. Or if you change your mind.
That social and aspect, yes. Being with others, not being with others. Yeah, for different people there are challenges. Interpersonally.
So was stress a result, a consequence of the lockdown, for example?
If you're unemployed and you're not sure how to pay the rent and to get the food and all of these things, yes, stress would be a great factor.
And how would stress be more harmful than the virus?
Because it reduces your immune system's ability to fight off and recover from illnesses.
Oh, okay. So the lockdown created a situation or conditions where persons, their ability to fight against the virus
Yes.
was reduced because of the stress and the general lack of
Yes. 'Cause
lack of interaction, lack of food, uncertainty, fear,
yes, even water
water. those-
distribution. I know there were issues with pipes bursting across the territory and then being fixed, and then persons having the water locked off for days, and having to catch a little bit as they could during that time.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
And so the last part, and then
okay,
I'm going to let somebody
go
else
ahead,
take
go
the
ahead,
mic.
Yes.
The symptoms of COVID and the mention of the underlying factors, heart and lung diseases. I was wondering if there could have been some statistics that could have been used to support, because then there was mention of strategies and policies based on scientific evidence. So the heart diseases, the lung diseases, you know, and the ability of the person to get this severe respiratory, what is it again? Severe respiratory syndrome, severe or acute respiratory syndrome. I would have liked to have heard more of that relationship and the scientific.
Oh, you mean during the debate? You're saying during the debate you would like to hear a more of a scientific approach during the debate?
Yes.
Okay.
And the last thing is that there were new businesses created and opened up during the lockdown. I participated in one of them. There was
That's a plus for the lock. That's a plus for the lockdown.
Yes, because
Okay.
there is a business that I learned about where persons are going hiking all over the territory and learning about the environment and the history of the territory, and that for me was a plus.
That was a plus. Yeah. One of the businesses I like was the service businesses where you could call up a company and have them go and shop for you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that I like that. I could even use that without a lockdown.
And the personal assistance that they could have gone to the pharmacy and
Yes.
yeah, those kind of things.
So you're sort of like saying there was some good things about the lockdown.
Yes.
And there was not some not so good things about the lockdown.
Yes.
So you
So
ain't.
I agree with both groups.
Anybody else have
covered their points very well.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else have a opinion?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am not on the fence about whether lockdowns are good or bad. I know that lockdowns would have served the purpose earlier in the pandemic, where we had so much misinformation about how the virus was contracted. But now that we know and we have that information, we cannot speak from a place of privilege, and we are. Because there are countries that can't afford to lock down, like India. They tried it, it didn't work, because people were literally dying from starvation, from hunger. And they had to just do the social distance protocols. Even in the continent of Africa, the last time I checked, there were like 34,000 deaths from COVID. But they are still grappling with the economic effects of having to close down, shut the borders, etc. And so what we're saying is that people are getting poorer just because we're telling them to stay in our home. In the BVI, we could control a lockdown system because we're a small place, so we can control movement of people. But in places like the US, you cannot. You can advise people to stay at home. They didn't really have a lockdown. They had stay-at-home orders. You can advise people, but how can you monitor these people? So even if you put these measures in place, how effective are these measures? Who is monitoring whether persons are adhering to it? So for us to revert to these measures, it will be detrimental to our economy and society at large.
But the lockdown initially, though, you're saying,
yes,
you're saying it works and it was a good thing when it happened.
Right.
But now, at this particular point, we don't need it anymore.
No, because we didn't have the information that we have now, right? One time the CDC said, oh, you can catch it by on surfaces, and then they retracted that. Oh, it's not airborne, and then they retracted that. So there was a lot of misinformation, but now that we know who is affected also, so those persons are able to, remain safely at home or practice their social distancing. But we know, we have the information, we have the knowledge. So to revert to that, I don't see it being beneficial to our society or any society.
But those persons those countries where the lockdowns actually was the cause of death of some persons, don't you think that? What do you think? Do you think that being poor and alive is better than being dead?
Yes, but look at the mortality rate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed, look at Africa. Africa is an entire continent. They have 34,000 deaths. Why is this so? Versus the US. But coming back to your point, poverty leads to death in many cases because you don't have the nutrition, you don't have access to medical care. So what are you going to do? Right? So all this is doing is that poor countries are getting poorer.
Thank you for that.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I believe that the lockdowns were necessary. Okay, let's just look at a couple of examples. In many states in the US, they did not lock down. I think they have more deaths than everywhere else on earth, and the economy tanked. So even though they didn't lock down, a lot of people died and the economy nosedived. Then look at New Zealand that did lock down. Yes, there were some serious short-term consequences, but the economy quickly recovered. So I think that to question whether or not they're necessary, we're beyond that. I think they're absolutely necessary. Whether or not they're necessary now is a different argument altogether, and we're not arguing that. And then you have to look at things in a certain way. Yes, it is absolutely true that lockdowns, like during the lockdowns, there was a lot of child abuse and spousal abuse and that kind of thing. But it's important to note that the lockdowns didn't cause the abuse, they revealed them, which is a good thing. Okay? They only revealed these abusive relationships. And you know how many spouses, women, children, even some men, realized during the lockdown, you know what? I can't live with this any longer. I'm going to get out. It was actually a good thing in many cases. Okay? I just wanted to mention that.
Well, let me just say, I think the point over here that this sister is making is that the harm of the disease caused, the mortality rate, the severity of illness was really less than the failure of the economy.
I don't think that's the case here.
So
Mr. Moderator.
Well, the thing is, well, I mean, you could argue that we have practically lost a pillar of our economy. You know, because right now, well,
But I agree that it severely affected tourism. But my point is that even in countries that did not lock down, tourism was affected severely. And the difference is that countries that locked down, their tourism industries stand to recover much quicker than those countries that didn't lock down. So you had to bite the bullet one way or another because the economy was going to be affected.
so the lockdown was better, did not do more harm than the virus.
Right, because look at it now. Look at it now. If you are sitting in a freezing car or, you know, a freezing, walking to work in Canada or the US, are you going to go to Barbados with dozens and dozens of cases, or are you going to come to the BVI with 2 cases? Yes, we locked down. Maybe Barbados didn't lock down as stringently. They're going to pay the consequences while we are recovering. You know, that is, I think, the overarching point. Now, there's theoretically and on paper, the lockdowns work well. Sometimes we don't implement it as they should. We know that we've had people who contravened quarantines and who tested positive and still were able to get out of wherever they were quarantined. So obviously those plans don't take into account all of that, and it's about enforcement, really. But I don't think we could question the necessity of the lockdowns, especially, you know, a few months ago.
Okay, this lady don't like what you just said. This lady over here. Yeah.
For me,
Are you going to publish that notebook when you finish?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to publish that notebook when you finish? Go ahead. You want to respond? You want to respond to the gentleman, right?
Okay, so for, again, strategies and policies based on scientific evidence. And I noticed something that occurred. I could be corrected, but all deaths seem to be reported as COVID deaths, regardless of what you died from. And that for me was, why? Because is it pneumonia? Is it bronchitis? Is it that you were obese and you died of a heart attack? Everything seemed to be reported as a COVID death, regardless of whatever the online factor was. So for me, categorization of deaths would be important information to me. And then, as I listened to the other speaker, speak of India, the case of India, I was thinking more of even our local situation. The unemployment, the hotels suffered devastation, homes suffered devastation. Then you had pre-existing situations where buildings were sick in different sectors of the island's economy. So then, we had to deal with, okay, where persons could be, because if your building is broken down and you're not in a safe environment to work, then you have to find an alternative venue to work. That is why some businesses shut down and persons were asked to work at home. And then we've had natural disasters where when we weren't flooding, other places were having rains and floods or droughts. Then you would have wars, which still haven't ceased, where refugees would infiltrate Europe and other places and coming out of Mexico into the US. Movements of persons that needed to be controlled because the numbers were fleeing war and other instances of drought and other economic situations were so large that they had to be controlled. And then our island economies cannot bear the burden of a lot of those things that larger countries can bear. So for me, the discussion on this whole COVID thing, there still needs to be, for me, a better understanding of really what this is all about. Because somebody else said it, if this is one disease and it causes us to lock down and shut off from the rest of the world, well, where would our resources be in a short time? For other diseases and other shocks that might come.
So the amount of persons that are dying from COVID-19 and the rate at which they are dying is not enough for us to destroy the global economy. So let some people die. Some people who are gonna die anyhow. Some people need to die. So
No, we're just looking at.
We need to have a good global economy for the rest of us that's going to remain alive.
And it doesn't matter. And to me, whatever country you're living in, you have to have a good economy, and you have to have a good medical system, and you have to have whatever human beings need to have to live, work, function. You know, regardless of where you are on the planet, whether in the North Pole, South Pole, and all the temperate and other zones in between. But we're finding that there are lots of inequities that are being exposed and need to be dealt with politically, socially, and whatever other ways we can deal with them as human beings, because we realize that after this planet Earth has been, polluted and degraded and whatever else has happened to it, there's no other place. No matter how many, the scientists said that we can go to Mars or to whatever other planet is out there. This is our home, made for us to live on and to. So.
I don't know. Isn't there heaven?
Oh well, that's a different discussion. So I'm not going there with you right now.
All right. I'm just advocating, but I shouldn't be advocating. Well, our judges are back, and they seem to have made some very firm decisions. So we're gonna hear from them. So the debate is now called to order once more, and I'd like to ask the adjudicators to come and give us a 5-minute critique of the speakers and the debate, and make the choices for the best speaker and the winner of the debate. So give a warm welcome for Chief Adjudicator, Ms. Nelsia St. John.
Should be good. Good afternoon, everyone. I want everyone to give all the participants a really big round of applause, because I think it takes great courage to do this. It takes preparation, and to stand here and have other people judge your work is significant. We, the judges, felt that the debate was a little less than what we expected based on the topic that was provided, especially in the current situation. However, we felt that everybody gave it their best effort. We did feel that there was not enough research sources used. And although there were significant points made by each team, we felt like we were left hanging for more information. So we had a point come up, but nothing was said about it, and we were just sitting waiting to see, okay, they're gonna expound on that. So we want all the participants to remember that if you make a point, you need to let us know, well, what goes with the point. Don't just tell it to us, we're not going to think about it. As it relates to the rebuttals, we felt like you came prepared with your rebuttal speech, but you have to remember that as the rebutter, your job is to listen to the debate so you can properly respond to what is being said. We felt like some of the points were missed, but overall, like I said, it was great work on both teams. The winner of the debate, and the scores were quite close, so no team should feel like if they did not win that they were worse than the other, is Bregado Flax. Score was 568.5, and Elmore Stoutt High School score was 554. And the Best Speaker award goes to Shania Martin. But we also will give a nice recognition to Miss Nicole Melvin, who came in as close second as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and good job.
Thank you very much, Attorney and Chief Adjudicator Nelsia St. John. Good brief critique. We appreciate that. And congratulations to Bregado Flax Educational Center. They're moving on to the finals, yes, with Claudia Cricky. So this is a Sister Island debate, right? Sister Island debate. But again, a big round for Elmore Stoutt. They always perform very well. So this brings us to the conclusion of the semifinals for the 2021 intersecondary school debates, and this brings us to the end of this debate. The economic and social consequences of lockdown, stay-at-home orders could cause more harm than the COVID-19 virus. Coming up on March the 10th is the final debate. March the 10th, the final debate, and it will be between Claudia Cricky Educational Center and the Bregado Flax Educational Center. So come out, support our brilliant young people, and learn some things. I'm sure that we've learned a lot of things during this debate. I certainly have. And I'm looking forward to the showdown, to the March showdown, March 10th. So invite your friends and your family to come out and to be here. I mean, you know, I know we're on Facebook, and so you can watch it on Facebook at your leisure. But when you have more persons in the room, I think the debaters feel like, you know, they're being supported, and it creates and generates a certain energy that is inspiring. And I really think that as best you can, and I know it's during the day, so it's more difficult, but as best you can, you know, come out and support the young people. Well, that's it for me until March 10th. I'm Adjudicator, your moderator for these semifinals, saying peace and blessings.